In this video, I am going to share one of the most valuable things that I share with all of my clients, which are some of the top leaders and educators on the planet. A big chunk of my job is helping those leaders and educators make connection and engagement easy online. So in this video, we're going to unpack 5 essential ingredients for virtual connection and engagement. By the end of this video, I guarantee that you'll be able to answer the question, how can active participation in meetings be encouraged? I'm excited to take what is in my brain and infuse it into yours. I'm Chad Littlefield. Let's get into it. I don't like fluff, so here are the 5 ingredients. And I want you to think about them from the start of your gathering all the way to the end of your gathering. They're mapped out actually in the sequence. Now, do you need to infuse all 5 of these every single time in every single meeting? No. In fact, I would recommend maybe you don't because it would be a lot. If you pick one on this day and another one on this day or 2 in this bigger meeting, I guarantee that you'll see active participation go up in meetings. Now, I teach and share this in the context of virtual and remote meetings, but these ideas are just as relevant and just as important in in-person gatherings as well. So at the very first is the unofficial start. I got this term from Mark Collard, a lovely chap in Australia. Introduced the concept to me that typically we reward people for being late, right? By waiting a few more minutes for people's Wi-Fi to catch up or for their commute or traffic or whatever else. And unofficial start says, no. If you have a meeting that starts at 9 a.m., you should start at 8:57 or 8:55 with an unofficial start that immediately and purposefully engages other people. There are a lot of ways to do that. One of my favorite ways is using a deck of cards that I created called We Connect cards that's being used by organizations and universities all over the world to help create conversations that matter. And so I might hold up a question right at the beginning of a meeting and say, just as you're coming in, can you drop your answer to this on the sticky note? Or can you sit next to somebody that you typically don't sit next to and just start a conversation riffing off of this question and then following a curiosity beyond that, right? Unofficial start could be that simple. Now, it'll be, that's immediately engaging. Now, if you choose a question that relates to why you're actually in the meeting, then you can meet the criteria of it being immediate and purposeful. So that unofficial start should run from a few minutes before the official start time to a few minutes after the official start time to reward the people who showed up early, but also extend a bit of understanding for people who might be shuffling in just a bit late. So maybe from 8:55 to 9:03, let's say. Second ingredient can only take 1 minute to frame, but is probably the most important ingredient of how to create active participation in meetings, and that is the context hook. The context hook sits right here. It can take as long as 5 or 10 minutes, but it can take as little as 1 sentence. And I'll give you 2 ways that I do this with clients. The first way that I frame the context hook is by getting clear about what my intention is for the meeting, for that gathering, making sure that it's others-centric, right? So the Latin root of the word intention, or intentio. And so I think about an intention like a rubber band that stretches over the needs of everyone in the meeting and pulls people together, right? Whereas most of the time our intention is like, whoop, it's an agenda item. It's very task focused. It's like the thing that we need to get done. It might not incorporate what other people care about or need, etc. And so I'm gonna get clear about my other-centered intention and state it in a way that resonates with them, right? So their language, not mine. So a personal example of this that recently showed up is I was leading a workshop on how to make virtual engagement and connection easy for 125 executives in a big national insurance company. And I knew that some didn't really want to be there, to be honest. And so I knew that my context hook was really important to bring everybody, to hook everybody into the same boat, into the same context. And so my language was, hey, I'm here, whether you want to be here or not. My intention is to be a painkiller for the next 100+ hours that you have to spend in meetings, which for most of them was going to happen in like the next 2 or 3 weeks, right? Executives are in meetings quite frequently. And so you think about that, really other-centric, be a painkiller. Like, not a lot of people love meetings necessarily, especially unproductive ones. And so the idea that, ooh, maybe this hour could actually make the next 100 hours of my meetings a little bit less exhausting and more productive, I'm curious. I'm in. I'm down to play the game that you're playing, Chad. Let's talk a little bit more. Right? So that is what the purpose of a context hook is. Sometimes I do a context hook to invite people to shift their state. I've got a mentor, Matt Church, who likes to say that state matters more than script. Super valuable idea. I'll do an exercise where I'll invite people to cover up their camera on Zoom, or if you were in person, you could just have people turn around and get into a certain state. So I'll just give like a quick narrative of saying, imagine that you're in the most boring, terrible meeting that you've ever been in. Imagine what your facial expressions are doing. Imagine what your posture's doing. Imagine what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And on the count of 3, I want you to remove that object and be in that state, or turn around and actually be in that facial expression, be in that posture, etc. 3, 2, 1. All right, you got everybody slumping over on Zoom and gallery view. It's awesome, right? It puts everybody in the state of like worst meeting ever. Then don't end there. That would be a bad place to end. That would be a bad context hook. Second round, cover up your cameras. And this time imagine that, I started doing this activity in the midst of COVID. And so cover up your cameras and imagine now that COVID has subsided to the point where you feel comfortable traveling to a brand new city that you've never been to. And you are on a train, and your train arrives at the platform you're about to get off at. And you step off, and one of your absolute best friends of all time is standing on the train platform, much to your surprise. I want you to imagine your state. I want you to imagine your facial expressions, your gestures, and on the count of 1, 2, 3, be in that state. And in Zoom or in person, like, there's just all this life that shows up in people's intention, right? People are put into the same context, in the same state. So for me, if I'm talking about the idea that state matters more than script, that's a good way to hook people in and say, ooh, this workshop is going to be way more interesting, interactive, energizing than any of the last 15 boring webinars that I've been on, right? So for me, that's a way to hook people as well. The third ingredient I talk about throughout all of our work. Will and I kind of wrote a book that unpacks it as well. It's this idea of connection before content. All right, and connection before content has 3 ingredients. It's got to connect to the purpose of why people are there. It's got to connect people to each other, and it has to at least create the option or choice for authenticity and vulnerability. So typically, connection before content is going to look like small group chats from 2 to 5 people talking about a question that connects to the purpose of why they're there and allows them to connect to each other. The best questions really invite some story or personal experience into the room. That's the way to meet that authenticity and vulnerability ingredient or checkbox. And then the 4th ingredient on our map here is content. This is like usually at least 80% of most people's meetings or gatherings, right? You've got an agenda. You have things you got to get through, things you got to talk about. And my tip there for creating active participation is make your content as visual and experiential as possible. The brain loves soaking in visuals and participating and contributing to experiences. The brain remembers visuals and experiential data much better than just language and numbers. And yet, if you rewind the tape, probably the last 10 meetings you've had were 90% language and numbers, right? They're things that are hop in a short-term memory and then hop out pretty quickly thereafter. The 5th ingredient is also the most often forgotten one, and I will never forget it though, since meeting a woman that was about half my height. I met her at an event, and she introduced herself to me as a professional storyteller. I was like, really? Tell me more. And I asked her what her best tip for telling really phenomenal stories is. And she said, really quickly, without even thinking, she said, all you've got to do is know the first sentence that you're going to say and the last sentence that you're going to say, and you can kind of fill in the middle. This was cool because I have a background in psychology, and I know that the primacy-recency effect, we tend to remember what happens first and last more than what happens in the middle necessarily. And so how you end your meetings is extremely important to how people will expect to show up in the next meeting, or how they will show up in their next meeting that they're clicking into a few minutes after that, or walking down the hall to go to an hour after that. So my facilitator or leader version of her advice is to know the first experience that you're going to start with, and the last experience that you're going to end with. If you like this video, you will really love this video on how to keep a remote team engaged, where I unpack 5 different closing exercises that you can walk people through. And if you made it to this point in the video, you probably are enjoying this. And so can you just check, are you subscribed? Because I would love to be in virtual remote conversation in this way. I put out regular tutorials to help leaders and educators make connection and engagement easy. And I also spend maybe sometimes too much time trying to answer questions and be in connection with people that are watching. So if you've ever got questions on my videos, please drop a comment below, and I'd love to meet you that way and continue the conversation. I'm Chad Littlefield. Have an awesome day.